Hello, everyone. This is Bart Sharp with Becoming Quantum Conscious on United Public Radio Network, UPNRN, and UFO Paranormal Radio Network at 107.7 and 105.3 out of the beautiful city of New Orleans, Louisiana. And I am in lovely France doing a recording. And today's topic is, are you extraterrestrial? Are you an ET? Do you feel like the world is becoming a little more populated with ET type of people? I certainly do. At least in my hometown of Austin, Texas, I see lots of people that I think are more on the ET end. And I certainly see that in the lovely France area of Southwest France in the Pyrenees. People are changing and we're more evolving. And the ET bloodlines have a have contributed to that, as well as the other bloodlines. Now, I think that this concept is something that a lot of us that would listen to this show would recognize, know, but we just want to explore it a little bit deeper and start to see how we can take this and make it at our advantage. Because being more of a ET bloodline or genealogy or genetics, however you want to call it, we have always felt like we were outside looking in, and that's doesn't have to be the perspective. In fact, the first time I ever heard about this concept was about 25 years ago when a friend of mine was channeling my guardian angel. And she said, "Well, of course you don't feel like you fit in here because you're not from here. You're from another planet and you think differently, you act differently, uh, you perceive the world differently because you're not from here. You just absorb it very differently," which was kind of comforting for me because I always felt like I was one of those people who never really fit in to the world growing up in a rural Texas town in West Texas, Weatherford, Texas, if you must know. Um, and people thought differently. Now, another person who has been a big contributor to the extraterrestrial consciousness is Gary Douglas of Access Consciousness. He had presented the concept of, he called it humans versus humanoids, or not versus, humans and humanoids. Humanoids being the extraterrestrial origin. So we want to give our salutations to Gary Douglas and Access Consciousness with this. And throughout the show, we'll likely be doing Access Consciousness clearings with this because I think they're really effective and very apropos to what we're doing today. And so all of that is fun. And, when we think about our extraterrestrial origins, and that there are really two types of people, and what Gary would say is that there's slightly more non-ET people than ET people. And of course, he was presenting this to me over 15 years ago. And now that I live in a town like Austin, Texas, I'm wondering if it's a little more balanced with that, or maybe that the ETs are starting to recognize uh, themselves. Um, and that's such an important part. So let's just start with comparisons and examples of what extraterrestrial versus non ET is about. I'm just going to start calling it ET and non ET. The ETs are all about change. Change is so important for ETs. because it just feels natural to them. It's more of consciousness is an expanding spiral that's always going up and it's moving up. And non ETs, this is a little bit too fast for them. They would rather see things stay the same and rest in the security that their life is going to be the same all the time. And when you see this with two different types of people, that people love their habits, they love the way their brain guides them to the same neurological patterns. And it's part of the brain that has nothing to do with ET and non ET. The brain always does that. And the ET point of view is we are always breaking out of the brain, out of the mind, out of the neurological patterns that want us to do the same things over and over and over again. We're always trying something different. And this is just who we are. It's quite lovely. And that's a big part of the conflict. And it's where a lot of the differences stem from, is just that concept there of change versus non change. So, one of the best things about an ET example is a belief that we're all connected. There's something about the ET belief systems that is very much a part of that, that we're all in this together, and what I do, think, feel affects other people around me. And this is really dipping into the concept of the unseen world versus the seen world. Because when you're in the seeing world, it's like everything that is measurable, that matters, has to be visible. Work, play, building things, having a home, having food, having money, counting money, making it very linear. All of those things are visual concepts that the non ET bank all of their money in. Whereas the ET is more into the world of unseen, that there's beliefs, there's energies, there's connectedness, there's a communion with all things that they feel, and they feel it inside of themselves. And that reality creates reality. So everything unseen creates reality as an ET point of view. And it really begins from there, is that belief system. And the non ETs are like, what? That doesn't make sense. Um, and maybe we ought to step back a little bit about what are these origins of this group? How did the ETs do this, or how did they get here? I don't have the answer to how they got here, but what we know is they've been here for thousands and thousands of years. Some people said, well, they came in and dominated and controlled and ruled over people that were the non ETs. And I believe that that's true from some of the evidence that I've seen. However, there's also races of the ETs that have been tireless helpers to expand consciousness. And so they seeded into humans and did crossbreeding. And that's kind of who we are. Somehow the ET and the human got together genetically and created a hybrid species. And this is what we call ET people right now. And we are all out there. So the ETs would probably start to see the world very differently, as opposed to we had to find solutions. We have to be proactive. In other words, they might see holistic health as very important. Eating healthy foods, doing exercises that make our bodies feel good, that strengthen the body. They would meditate. Whereas the non ETs might be more like, well, I just want to eat what tastes good. I'll take vitamins to uh, keep my health up. And if I'm sick, I'll take a drug. There's a quick and easy solution. And a lot of that, it really stems with physical gratification, that we want to physically gratify ourselves as the main priority. And whereas the ETs have a balance with that, they're going, well, physical gratification is great. However, there's a lot in the evolution of things that requires me to not be focused on that all the time. There's things like service to others and the belief that we're all connected. And therefore, we have to think in a bigger way, to think globally, to act locally. That's a real ET type of concept, you know. And another great example is the pollution. Um, Making solutions such as an electrical car would be a real ET solution. And whether you like him or not, Musk would be a big time ET type of guy because he just sees that that is a very optimal solution to creating something. And of course, he's creating lots of money and doing a lot of things with it. And there's a lot of controversy with that. However, the electric car is needed and those type of things to in that mindset. The electric car may not be perfect, but it's a step forward to evolving us away from gas cars, which create a lot of problems on our planet. Um, and the ET's type of solution is always, what's next? How do we evolve beyond this? It's just one step at a time, really. But the ET is always looking at that as a possibility. And it can be very frustrating for ETs in a non ET world, seeing people not wanting to change at a time when change is happening. So let's do an access clearing with that. So everything that is in points of resistance to change in you, because you've been in a non ET world, as we all have, that says, no, change is scary, it's fearful, I don't want to happen. Now, part of that is you may be learning those values and accepting them as your own. Whereas there's another part of you that knows that that's not exactly right because you're much more expanded with that. But you're buying into the old agenda. So everything that holds that fear that we can't change that much. Change is scary. Change is uncomfortable. And I am resistant to it for those reasons and probably more. Would you be willing to let those go? And all the fear, all the shame, all the sadness, and all the anger connected to it. Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. Now, when I do that statement, that's an access consciousness clearing statement, and it just clears the energetic memory in your body with that. It's really great stuff. Um, so, how much do we go into the future because we are been afraid of the past? So everything that is that we created different ways, means, methods to fear the future because we've had bad memories in the past. Would you be willing to let those go? Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. When I talk to some of my more extraterrestrial conscious friends, that's a big word, extraterrestrial conscious friends. In other words, they're the weirdos that are always studying these possibilities and looking out to what's happening in the world. And I've had a conversation a few years ago with a friend of mine. And I said, there's so much that is adverse in our world. I don't know if we're going to get through it. And he goes, there's so many things, so many new inventions happening right now that how can we not get through it? And then he started talking about the ocean being cleaned up by by this man and different technologies that are solving these problems, and they're just all right out there. And he's more like, well, it's inevitable that they're going to come. And that's where we have to keep our focus, Bart. It's kind of like a slap in the face. uh, with that, I think I was going into my human negativity with that because the humans really look at the past and going, well, we couldn't solve this in the past. How can we solve it in the future? And everything that brings up with you, would you be willing to let it go? Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. And one of the things about differences between ETs and non-ETs is blaming. And the ET is more likely to blame themselves. When a problem starts to show up, they're more likely to say, well, how am I a part of it? Or I feel bad about this and feel shame about it, even though it's not my problem. I feel the sadness of it, and that can be quite overwhelming. Different reactions like that pull them into being a part of the problem. And sometimes they start to blame themselves and take that shame on from that perspective. Whereas the non ETs are more about blaming others and blaming others for creating the problems or that it's their fault when they know that they are part of that fault or that mistake. Um, and there's a separation there. One of them goes, the ETs go right into it and become immersed into the problem. And that's how they create the density. They're their own self-blame, their own shame, their sadness that it's there, and the anger at themselves. Those are all quite common characteristics with the ETs. So everything that you have experienced that and have felt those emotions, and everything that you've created a distance from yourself from others with it, would you be willing to let it go? Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, all nine, shorts, boys, and beyonds. Um, and then with the non-ET side about blaming others, it's one of those really most limiting possibilities because if you blame others, that means you're separating you from the problem. You're creating separation from yourself. And that means that you are repressing your emotions towards it, repressing your responsibility towards it, and then creating an anger through the blame onto others. And this can be quite addictive, really, because if you're always blaming people, you the anger of that stimulates your adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands give you more energy. And so it's energizing to get angry at other people. when you go into those blame type of cycles. And a lot of people do that just to kind of wake themselves up. And so, how many ways, means, methods, form, structure, significances have you done that? Blamed others, created that adrenal cycle, and separated you from you. So, everything that is, would you be willing to let it go? Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, pod, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. And would you be willing to claim on and acknowledge that it's okay to not have all the answers? Right, wrong, good, bad, pot, pod, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. And this is such a big issue with um, ETs and not ETs, is to blame or to not blame. And I keep referring back to a lot of access consciousness concepts because they deal with this issue so well. And one of the things is that when you start to blame, you might want to ask the question, or when you're angry at somebody, um, what is my responsibility in this? Where does my anger come from? And look at that introspection of that. That is one of the ways you become free from it. Because if you're blaming and you start to go into those cycles, and ET people and non-ET people do this, but it's more of a non-ET characteristics that the ETs fall into. And why I say that is because it's just a denser point of view. It has a lower vibration, and the ETs have more potential to be in a higher vibration because their bloodlines come from beings that are functioning at the sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th dimensional realities. So, yeah, when you start to unlock your ET stuff, you are on a faster track to be in a higher dimensional awareness. And one of the key things is not to blame others, not to get angry about it. And most importantly, when you do, start to look about why you did it. What are those repressed parts about it that I need to look at? That's how you get free of it. Um, it's not about out thinking about what the wrongness of everything is and trying to find answers to our tough problems sometimes. That sometimes can get very sticky, and particularly people that blame, all the leaders of the world for making all the mistakes and manipulating us and doing these things. They may be doing that, or likely to be doing that, but I always come to the point of, as an ET, how can I change this? What is my part in the change? That's empowering. And that's what ET consciousness is all about, is empowerment. Becoming you and claiming this energy that is deeply inside of you. Now, if you are a non-ET and you're listening to this show, you're probably offended by all of this and thinking this guy is crazy. It's a good litmus test with this. You could also do applied kinesiology, muscle testing, and just ask that question, do I have extraterrestrial origins? And you get a yes or a no on that. And if you do not know what muscle testing or applied kinesiology is, just look it up on YouTube, see some examples of it, and start learning how to use it as a tool. It's one of the best ways you can start getting answers that are beyond your logic, but go into your body consciousness, which is where your real source is. So, one of the things about ETs and non ETs is the non ETs have a tendency to evaluate life by going backwards in time. They want to go back to a safer time in life. And, the good old days when hamburgers were only 17 cents for a burger. I actually lived at that time and ate a 17-cent burger that was really good. However, I cannot go back to that time and try to recreate it. I can cook those hamburgers at home, though, but I don't know any restaurants that serve them that way at 17 cents. Um, Whereas the ETs are more about, well, there's no more 17-cent hamburgers. How can I create something better? What is better than a 17-cent hamburger? Well, maybe a veggie burger at this day and age, and various other things. So this is one of the most important parts of it, is that we don't go backwards. We can't make things great again, which is going backwards. We can only create something cooler and better as we learn from our mistakes, our shortcomings, and have the humility to know that we've made mistakes and go, well, what am I not getting about this? What do I have to learn about this? This is an ET type of consciousness that opens this up, because once again, you are on the spiral up in consciousness when you are in those type of questions. You're just looking for solutions. You're going into the unseen consciousness to see what is beyond what you know. The intellect may have all of these answers, and you may have a really smart brain, or you may be really smart and you have a very connected to the intelligence that your mind is cultivated. But in ways, that's a little bitty box of what you know, and you're stemming from that. And ET would always be asking questions to go beyond that box. They would be looking into creativity. They would be looking into um, becoming attuned to other energies beyond them, so that they expand what their knowledge is that is beyond the intellect, beyond books, beyond, rank and file, black and white information. And it comes up that way. And they have a knowing when they see the truth, that this is really true. And I don't have to have all the scientific data to know it's true. I just know it's true because I feel it inside of themselves. This is ET type of consciousness. It's awareness that goes beyond the mind. And this is the unseen world. So, another great example of this, and we see this very apparent today, if the planet is dying, or if it's struggling, or it's regressing, do we find an answer? Or are we in an attitude of, oh my God, we don't have answers. We better just stay with the things that we're doing, become fearful, and use up all the resources, because we don't have a solution right now, and we don't see a solution in our intellect. Therefore, we just might as well enjoy ourselves while we're still living. Sounds crazy to me, and this is typical of ET and non-ET. The ET would say, we can find solutions. It just doesn't look right now. And this is not only about world problems, it's about personal problems. The non-ET looks at their problems and just says, this is a challenge. And how am I going to find what's going to work for me? It's always in that openness. And we do not have to do this with fear. We do it out of possibilities. This is an ET attitude. There's always lessons here. There's always possibilities. And that's what we're looking at. So another aspect about this uh, is, how do you break down the concepts that you live by, that everybody lives by? For example, something like chocolate. Like eating chocolate makes me fat. So you're telling your body this, like, oh, this is so delicious, but it's going to make me fat because it's so naughty and it's got sugar. And that's the intellect with it. And sure enough, if you eat enough of that chocolate, it'll make you fat. Now, an ET concept would be I thoroughly enjoy this chocolate, and it's so delicious and sensual that my body's going to appreciate all of what that is. And it's just going to be joyfully consumed. And you'll probably eat less chocolate because you're very present with it. You're not eating it mechanically, you're eating it in consciousness, in sensuality, in awareness. And therefore, you'll probably eat less, you'll have more enjoyment, and it will digest in your body totally differently. It's just like tonight in lovely France, we will have fish, chips, and beer. And logically, everybody will say, oh, well, that's not very good dinner. But we do it in a celebration here. It's a special event, and it's sacred to us, at least the friends I'm with. And there's so much joy in that consumption, you know, that it goes beyond our typical belief systems. Your joy in doing life breaks you beyond the box. And this is so much of what ET consciousness was all about from the beginning is how do we break these humans out of the box and have them evolve? Well, to begin that process in your own normal everyday life is you are always looking at the possibilities that it could be different. The word that comes up is humility. The humility that we're vulnerable with it, that we're receiving something much greater than us. And even if we eat chocolate, we're consuming that this magical deliciousness that it is. And when we look at it that way, chocolate completely changes. Or the fish and chips done by this delightful Englishman. And we're in the English traditions of fish and chips. And we go into the magic of that culture. And it's a very special thing. It's not casual. We don't eat it mechanically. Every bite is consumed with laughter and fun. And dang, this is really good. Um, Therefore, you have a different reaction to it. Your body absorbs it differently. That is an ET type of concept that this body has a magic within it that can change everything. Um, so this is an important part concept between ETs and non-ETs. Now, another thing is emotions. An ET concept would be is that emotions are teachers. We have to learn what emotions are so we can evolve beyond them. But also, they're a big pleasure of life. That emotions take us to places to create an immediacy with us. In other words, if we're angry, we should take action because that's what anger is. Now, that doesn't mean that we go out and kick somebody's butt. It might mean, well, sometimes that's what's appropriate, but most of the time, it's recognizing that we're angry and that we need to do something in our own lives. And we need to take action with that. And the anger pushes us. So it's a beautiful thing to have anger that pushes us and gets us to accomplish or to feel sadness that we're grieving something and we're going in a low cycle in life to feel what that lowness and that lowness in that contraction is all about. Now, if we can really absorb what sadness is, when we start to come out of it, we will go to a higher place in life instead of staying in the middle. You know, we'll have a sadness and then will peak high. But if you are trying to avoid sadness and you don't want that low place, you won't get to the high place. And this is kind of a difference between ET and non-ET. The non-ET chooses to feel less. When they feel bad, they might just go watch television or something, or go eat a big steak or something, just to anesthetize. And it's exactly what gets it stuck in our lives. So, it's kind of like the ETs are considered oversensitive or over emotional. It's like I have a friend that has a very air-like energy. She thinks real fast, she feels very intensely, and everybody thinks she's strange because she absorbs things so profoundly. This is very ET. She just has a very sensitive system, and there's nothing wrong with this. In fact, it's a talent and ability because she can sense and feel things that are very profound in the world. She can be a very strong innovator and creator. But if she believe the non-ET thing is like, oh, you shouldn't feel so much. You shouldn't get so much in despair or sad or angry about things because that's socially inappropriate. Well, um, that's just not ET. ETs feel things immensely, and they're having to process through this, and there's nothing wrong with this. It's just who we are, and it just really goes back to that basic principle that if you're ET, you're always going to feel different than a lot of the other people. And particularly growing up as a kid when people were less aware of this, that, you're going to be the weirdo because you're feeling and sensing things or seeing things that other people aren't. And in this day and age, we're more accepting of that. But when I grew up as a kid, it wasn't very acceptable to have that intense of emotions, to be that sad. Everybody's supposed to be normal and happy and please smile and, stay with the program, that type of stuff. And that's so much about what non-ET is staying with the program. So everything, all the force and energy you use to be required to stay in the program and push yourself. Will you be willing to let that go and all of that conformity that you have been pushed to become and everything that you have judged that you have to do that over your own choices? Everything that is, will you let it all go? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. Yeah, it's this type of stuff with the non-ETs because when you're an ET, it just doesn't make sense here all the time. Why people are so slow and why we do things so slowly, why we do things with particular routines. Um, a lot of this just doesn't make sense to us. And some of the best ways that you can deal with this is recognize you're different. Recognize that you see things different. And really, this is very important, is just because people don't see what you see, don't make them wrong. Don't say, oh, well, they just don't get it. They're not the ET extraordinaire that I am. That's kind of creating the problem that you've been living with because you're creating separation at that point and you're doing it through judgment. It's more like I'm me and I like to create things and I like to run at a faster pace, and other people may not. And it's okay that they think that away and have no resistance to them. Be absorbed in who you are. Be absorbed into your own creativity and your own adventure. And never ever believe that your adventure is impotent, that it doesn't have any type of power. Um, and one of the most important things, and this is just kind of going into some of the solutions of ET-ness, is just really embrace that you're a different type of creator. And it doesn't matter what you're creating, and your creations do not have to be famous or make you famous or have you make money or have notoriety or success. ETs create to create. And some people do get famous with their stuff. However, they're always creating. A great example of this is David Bowie. A big fan, loved this music in the 70s. And he went on to do art. He does a variety of things that are highly creative that have nothing to do with music because he's creating all the time. And probably what dictates this is if it's interesting to him. And this is a really good measurement to do is if you do something and you have more energy, it makes you excited, you're more enthusiastic when you do it, it's right for you. Find those little things that do that. It could be just doodling on a piece of paper or growing some flowers, and it makes you really excited and happy. Well, that tells you that you should do that. And as great creators, we cultivate these things. This is what ET-ness is about, is cultivating all of these inner things that make us feel lighter inside. For me, I'm a big time meditator. And so a big part of my life is going to Southwest France and leading spiritual tours. But it was a cultivation of learning how to be in these energies at these sacred sites and letting them evolve inside of me. I always feel good when I go to sacred sites and feel these energies, and it makes profound changes in me. It's almost like being in lightness all the time creates something bigger inside of me. I have no idea how that's going to work, but it does. It just shows up differently. So when you're doing all your creative activities and there's a list of things that you love because you are a ET of magnitude and you're creating things all the time and you're enjoying your life as a result of your choice to be excited about life and all the things that you're creating, it builds a space inside of you that is alive and vibrant. It can be spiritual and it can feel like light. In the higher evolutions of it, that's what it is. That's why they say light beings. And that's what the ETs are. And when they came and they started emerging with us, regular humans started to be light beings. They had light inside of them. And that is very much true with us, that we have that light inside of us. And that is probably the most important thing about an ET consciousness is cultivating that energetic, alive, happy form of light that we all are. It's all good. So, we do this one step at a time. But one of the most challenges that we have as ETs is apathy, that we do not make a difference. And I see it so much, and people almost like they're in a tailspin about all the problems in the world or all the problems in their life. And they keep repeating the stories and they ask this horrible question: why did it happen to me? Or why is the world so awful? And when you ask why questions, It's almost like in an infinity circle, and you get trapped into that continual circle of no possibilities. And it creates apathy, it creates weakness, disempowerment. And the really important thing about being a great extraterrestrial creator is you do not have to have all the answers. You do not have to be the solution to the problems in the world. What is better is what is the next step for you in creating the solution. You don't have to be the big guy in creating a solution for a world problem. What is best is what part can you do? I used to do this class where we would get together at my house and we would do world healing classes. And we'd take a topic like the pollution in the ocean, which seems to be like this big, overwhelming problem, or at least it was 7 or 8 years ago. And what we found was what was the biggest limitation with the collective consciousness of all in relation to the uh, ocean problem was our shame. And the shame that we were not strong enough to solve that problem. The problem was way too big for us to solve. And therefore, we felt ashamed about it. And as a result, we became disempowered and turned our backs to it. It's like, I can't do anything about it. I'd rather forget it. This is a very non ET attitude. Whereas an ET attitude is, I'm going to do a little bit. What's the step for me? What's my contribution? I am part of the possibility. And so we started doing energetic work on that, of that we plant the seed for this problem to be solved. And it's really funny because a couple of years later, a guy comes up with this great invention that is, having amazing results in cleaning the ocean. And some people say, well, in another 5 to 10 years, we'll have a really clean ocean. And to me, that's really amazing and miraculous. And I know that there's a lot of other people that created this collective consciousness that promoted a leader to show up. So that is why I am not a proponent of apathy or looking at all the problems and complaining about them and staying stuck in that place. Because frankly, it's just not ET. It's not what gets things done. I am a person of possibilities, and I will do small parts to help solve problems. And there's lots of ways to do it. But the first step is for you to care, to look at the possibilities of what you can do, and ask that question, what is next? What is next in that evolution for me? These are the things that is what ET empowerment is about. We all do it as a little person. I mean, what is there? Like 8 billion people on the planet? Of course, in your own humility, you cannot be the answer for all of these big problems. But you can be on the side that is looking for solutions and has hope and has love that spreads this apart. This is what the ETs were really trying to teach us is we all work together as a whole to create these solutions. And we live in that humility that we can do that. Um, I love this quote with Bob Dylan. I heard an interview with him. He's so ET. Uh, he said he really thought one of the things that concerns him is people always looking at their cell phones all the time. It's almost like an entertainment. But what they're missing is to look around at life, even just to look at the at clouds or to be quiet inside of yourself and feel what it feels like to be inside of you and to have that inner space with that. And sometimes our cell phones separate us from us if we're always looking at it and playing video games or looking at all of these countless messages. It's a totally different form of life. Um, Being that I'm in lovely France right now, and the cell phone bills are really high if you use your cell phone over here. Um, I have turned mine off. I check in with my computer and my emails, and I just stay internal. I look at the world around me. I see the beauty. I see all the I feel all the vibrations. That to me is more real and more about life. And it grows something inside of me through that. And that is so much of what ET consciousness is how can you grow and become a bigger embodiment because that changes the world. That changes everything around you. So everything that has been tuned into the cell phone mentality, that matrix, that collective consciousness, would you be willing to let that go? Right, wrong, good, bad, pod, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. And everything that you feel like you're being manipulated by some source to stay stuck on your cell phone and stuck on that energy. Would you be willing to claim on and acknowledge you always have a choice whether to play or not to play, or how much you should play as opposed to being unconscious about it? Everything that is, right, wrong, good, bad, pod, all nine shorts, boys, and beyonds. Whoa, that was intense. One of the big discrepancies with ETs and non-ETs, and we think about non-ETs, we're really a lot, we're really exploring that they came from Cro-Magnon or Neanderthal or wherever, primitive human beings came from. They evolved from that lineage. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the ETs came in and started creating these hybrids. And thus the advanced societies kind of showed up. It's kind of a mystery to me. It never made sense to me that we would think that in the older days that we were so primitive, but yet we had, pyramids and Egyptians and Atlanteans and all of these super advanced things happening that that are amazing. Um, and all of those were contributions from ET culture. At least that's in my opinion. You know, and then we have the Neanderthal or the non-ET. And this is about evolving both of our all people and changing the attitudes with this. Now, the non-ETs are denser, and they really have a tendency to look at life through judgment. And if you have a problem, you use force and aggression to get it solved. You push through it, And how many times have you heard this? It's like, I just got to sludge on through with this problem and I'll get through it. It's not about asking a question of like, well, what do I have to learn from this? Or, what are the possibilities that I see something different to where it's easier? No, it's more like I just gotta push on. There's no other choice. I gotta just go do it. It's kind of dense. And that's kind of a non-ET point of view. Force, density, aggression, and judgment. All of those parts are part of that ET or non-ET um, possibility. And so they're always pushing through that. And there are qualities of that. You can have perseverance with that. You can create strength. Uh, but a lot of times it's not a lot of fun and there's not a lot learned from it. Whereas the non ETs, they would be looking at things with possibility, giving it allowance. They would also be into introspection and a communion with things and creation. Those are more non ET characteristics. In other words, if they had a problem and they were an allowance of it, they wouldn't be resisting it and judging it, saying, oh, this is horrible. They would be more in a possibility of, well, what can this teach us? What can this teach me? And how can I create something better than this? They would always be into that place of looking at it that way, as a problem is a possibility for something better to come along. And they would also be in communion, knowing that other people might have better solutions, or they could connect to a collective consciousness to raise their own vibration to where they could see it differently. And then they would go out and create something as a result of that. It's always in that possibility. Um, I do a tour business in Southwest France, and basically I do it because I think it's fun, and it allows me to go to Southwest France. Um, but I'm really always believing in the unseen reality with this. In other words, the power of the country and the power of the sacred sites attract the people to come on the tour. I do not do much advertising. I have a website, I have a Facebook group. That's it. And people come, and I always have enough to do tours and pay my way and meet my own uh, needs and expectations. It's very profitable that way. But it's believing in that unseen reality of that this is a powerful place and it will attract the people that need to come. And so I really follow into that. It's not that that's a passive point of view. It is an invitation is more the possible and recognizing the strengths of what is here. I see those unseen things as part of the attractions that makes the tour successful. It's just like being a radio show host. I have no idea where this is going to be taking me, but the possibility that I get to commune with thousands of people every week has a huge energy to it. Therefore, it will serve my life. It will serve other possibilities. It's just energy. It's just people getting together on a radio show and thinking the same thing through the show itself that creates all of these possibilities, not only for me, but for everybody listening. That's what I see this show as. It's something to that. And this is very much an ET attitude, that we get into the bigger energies and the expanse of things. We ask questions that even make them bigger. We see that we're a part of something much bigger than us. And thus, ideas to create it bigger happen because we're always expanding in those things. We're not narrowing it down. We keep looking beyond. And this is what possibilities of ET consciousness is about. And it's about how we can change the world as well. Because when you are in ET state of being, you are serving, you are helping others. This is what we naturally do. We know that we're not just one person, There are many. These are all ET concepts. So I hope that we've learned a little bit more about ETs, and you can look at yourself and go, I'm proud to be an ET. It's fun being an ET, and I love this type of consciousness. So I'm Bart Sharp of Becoming Quantum Consciousness on National Public Radio Network and UFO Paranormal Radio Network, and welcome you to come next week as we will have Sue Colson, who is what would you call her? A steward of the Avebury Stone Circle. She runs a lot of meditations and guidance with the magical properties of one of the most powerful places on the planet, the Avebury Stone Circle and the UK. So come join us then. And I wish you a very ET type of day. Thank you so much.